Everyone order the lobster. And keep the vintage coming. Brenda's voice boomed, shattering the sophisticated hush of Lou Jardin. She stood at the head of the table, arms wide, looking like a lottery winner drunk on newfound power. My daughter, Haley, just got a massive promotion. She is treating us all tonight. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold despite the stifling heat of 15 bodies pressed around the table. My aunts, uncles, and cousins, relatives who hadn't called me in 3 years, cheered wildly, raising crystal goblets of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. To the family bank, my cousin Kyle shouted, grease already shining on his chin as he tore into a wagyu steak. I didn't cheer. I didn't move. I stared down at my bowl of onion soup, the only thing I had ordered. My stomach twisted violently. They thought this was a victory lap. They didn't know I was already dead in the water. As Brenda tapped her knife against her glass for another speech, preening for the room, I caught the waiter's eye. He looked harried, balancing a tray of appetizers I hadn't approved. Separate check, I whispered, my voice steel. Just the soup. He blinked, confused, but the look in my eyes stopped his questions. I slapped a 20 on the table, grabbed my purse, and stood up. Brenda was mid-toast, glorifying her own sacrifices when I turned on my heel and walked straight out the back service door. The heavy metal door clicked shut behind me, sealing the noise inside, but the silence outside felt worse. It was the silence of a life imploding. I marched to my beat-up sedan, my hand shaking so hard I dropped my keys twice before jamming them into the ignition. As I peeled out of the lot, my phone on the passenger seat lit up like a flare. Mom calling. Then Aunt Viv. Then a barrage of texts. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just drove, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to breathe through the panic rising in my throat. At a red light, the screen flashed again. 45 missed calls in 12 minutes. One voicemail notification popped up. I hit play against my better judgment. The manager is blocking the doors, Haley. Aunt Viv's voice shrieked through the speakers. Security is here. The bill is over $5,000. Brenda is screaming. How could you leave us like this? I didn't smile. There was no joy in this revenge, only a sick, hollow ache. I turned the phone off and threw it into the back seat. My name is Haley. I am 25 years old, and this morning I was a top-tier logistics manager at Summit Global. I was the fixer, the provider, the reliable one. But as I unlocked my apartment door and saw the cardboard box sitting in the hallway, filled with my stapler, a succulent, and my nameplate, I knew that version of me was gone. The destruction had started exactly 4 weeks ago. For weeks earlier, I sat in my corner office, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound as I tracked a fleet of cargo ships navigating the Atlantic. This was my domain. I wasn't just a manager. I was the youngest logistical lead in company history. I thrived on the pressure, on the knowledge that one wrong digit could cost millions, and I never got the digits wrong. My salary was substantial, but I never saw much of it. It flowed out of my account as quickly as it came in. Brenda's rent, Kyle's car insurance, bail money for an uncle I barely knew. I was the golden goose, and they were plucking me bare. My phone buzzed. It was Brenda. "Haley, listen to me," she demanded, skipping the hello. "Kyle needs a job. He's in debt again. You need to hire him at Summit." I rubbed my temples, staring at a complex shipping manifest. "Mom, absolutely not. This is high-stakes logistics. We deal with hazardous materials and international law. Kyle is a dropout who got fired from a movie theater for sleeping in the projection booth. He's family." Brenda snapped, her voice turning icy. "You sit in that ivory tower and forget who raised you. You have the power to help him, and you're choosing not to. You think you're better than us." "It's not about being better," I said, my voice firm. "It's about my reputation. I won't risk my career for him." She hung up on me. The silence that followed was heavy with a threat I didn't yet understand. 3 days later, I walked into the company break room, desperate for coffee, and froze. Sitting at the high-top table, wearing a Summit Global lanyard and spinning a company-issue tablet on his finger, was Kyle. My stomach dropped. I immediately pulled out my phone to text Brenda, demanding an explanation, but the door swung open before I could hit send. Evander walked in. Evander was the vice president of sales, but he had recently muscled his way into overseeing operations. He was a man in his 40s who harbored a deep resentment that a woman 20 years his junior had streamlined the systems he used to control. He smiled at me, a predatory baring of teeth. Haley, Evander purred, clapping a hand on Kyle's shoulder. Meet our new inventory associate. I heard your family was looking for opportunities. Unlike some people, I believe in lifting up the community. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Brenda had called him. She had gone behind my back to the one man who wanted to see me fail. I waited until Evander left before I cornered Kyle. What are you doing here? I hissed. You don't know the first thing about supply chains. Kyle laughed, leaning back in his chair with a smugness that made my hands itch. Aunt Brenda said you were being a gatekeeper, Haley. She called Evander personally. Said you were too stuck up to help your own blood. Watch me climb, cousin. I'll be running this place while you're still reading spreadsheets. He didn't want a job. He wanted to humble me, and my mother had handed him the ammunition. The sabotage began subtly, like a slow leak in a pressurized tank. First, a shipment bound for Rotterdam was delayed by 48 hours because the customs paperwork was misfiled. Then, a priority manifest for a tech client in Tokyo vanished from the server entirely. I worked 14-hour days, scrambling to fix errors I hadn't made, double-checking every entry until my eyes blurred. But the damage to my reputation was compounding. In our weekly executive strategy meetings, Evander was relentless. He would project the declining metrics on the 4K screen, circling the errors in red. Production is down in logistics again, he would say, looking directly at me with feigned sympathy. Maybe you're distracted, Haley? I know family drama can be taxing. If you can't handle the workload, just say so. We can find someone with more focus. I gritted my teeth, my nails digging into my palms. These aren't calculation errors, I argued, my voice tight. Someone is manually overriding the automated system. I decided to catch them in the act. One evening, long after the cleaners had left, I looped back to the office. The floor was dark, save for the glow of a single monitor in the secure zone. It was Kyle. He was logged into a terminal he shouldn't have had clearance for. I rushed over, but he minimized the window instantly. I tried to pull the access logs immediately, but my screen flashed. Access denied. Administrator privileges revoked. Evander had quietly stripped my oversight permissions. I wasn't just fighting incompetence anymore. I was being framed. The hammer dropped on a Tuesday morning. Today, shattering the fragile peace I had tried to maintain. The office was buzzing with panicked whispers when Evander summoned me to the main boardroom. The blinds were drawn. The CEO wasn't there, but the head of legal was. We have a situation, Haley, Evander said, his voice dripping with faux gravitas. He projected a shipping manifest onto the wall. Container MSKU 908271. High-end electronics bound for Hamburg. It vanished from the tracking grid last night. That's a $1.2 million loss. I stepped closer to the screen. That's impossible. The automated safeguards would have flagged a reroute instantly. They would have, Evander agreed, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Unless someone with administrator privileges disabled them. He clicked a button. A server log appeared. User, H_Venet. Time, 2:14 a.m. I was asleep at 2 in the morning. I protested, my heart hammering against my ribs. Anyone could have spoofed that login. We have video, the legal counsel interjected coldly. They played a clip from the security camera above my desk. The room was dark, but a figure in a gray hoodie sat at my computer. The figure was my height, my build. The face was obscured by the hood. I stared at the screen, nausea rising in my throat. It wasn't me. It was Kyle, but he was wearing a standard-issue Summit global hoodie. Swag they gave out at the Christmas party. Half the office owned one. He had used the anonymity of the uniform and the access Evander gave him to frame me. The interrogation room, formerly the HR director's office, felt like a prison cell. The air was stale, and the walls seemed to close in on me. The legal counsel pushed a thick document across the table. "Here is the deal, Ms. Bennett," she said, her tone devoid of empathy. "The company is willing to forego criminal charges for the missing container if you resign immediately. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement, forfeit your severance, and agree never to work for a competitor." I read the fine print. It wasn't just a resignation, it was a confession. If I signed, I was admitting guilt. I would never work in logistics again. Evander didn't just want me out of the building. He wanted to nuke my career so he could claim my automated systems as his own invention. "And if I don't sign?" I asked, my voice trembling but loud. "Then we terminate you for cause," she replied. "We sue you for the lost cargo value. We ruin you." I looked through the glass wall. Evander was standing by the coffee machine, laughing with Kyle. They looked like partners in crime. I stood up, pushing the paper back. "I didn't steal that container. And I'm not signing my life away to cover up your incompetence. Fire me. Do your worst." I walked out, leaving the stunned lawyer staring at my empty chair. I had kept my dignity, but I had just lost everything else. Security escorted me to the curb 20 minutes later. I stood on the hot pavement, clutching the cardboard box that contained 5 years of my life. My access badge was deactivated. My company phone was wiped. I checked my personal bank app, frozen pending the internal investigation. I had $72 in cash and a checking account that was rapidly draining. My phone rang. It was Brenda. I answered, desperate for a mother's comfort. "Mom," I choked out, tears finally spilling over. "I lost my job. They framed me. Security just threw me out." I waited for the outrage. I waited for her to say she was coming to get me. Instead, Brenda sighed, a sound of pure annoyance. "Haley, honestly, can you not be dramatic for one day? We have the dinner at Le Jardin tonight. All your aunts are coming." I froze. "Did you hear me? I was fired. I have no income." "Oh, stop it," she snapped. "Kyle already told me you were being let go. He said you were dropping the ball. Look, you have plenty of savings. Just pay for the dinner tonight. Fake it, Haley. Tell everyone you got promoted. Do not embarrass me. We'll discuss your little mistake tomorrow." The line went dead. The realization hit me colder than the wind. She wasn't surprised. She knew. She had talked to Kyle. She knew I was being set up, and she didn't care as long as I paid the bill and kept up appearances. I sat in my car for 3 hours, staring at the steering wheel until the sun began to dip below the skyline. The tears had dried up, leaving behind a clarity that felt sharp and dangerous. I connected the dots. Brenda didn't just want a free dinner. She wanted control. If I lost my job, I couldn't afford my apartment. I would have to move back into her basement. I would be under her roof, paying her bills with my unemployment checks while Kyle took my place at the firm. It was a trap. And the dinner tonight was the final lock, snapping into place. I opened my banking app again. I had enough liquid cash to pay my rent for exactly 1 month, buy groceries, and keep the lights on. Or I could pay for the 5-star dinner Brenda had demanded. I couldn't do both. If I paid for the dinner, I was broke. I was theirs. If I walked away, I was the villain. But I was free. I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, but my jaw was set. I wiped the mascara from my cheeks. I put the car in gear. I would go to Le Jardin. I would let them order the wine. I would let them dig their own grave. And then I would bury them in it. The timeline caught up to the present. I sat at the white-clothed table at Le Jardin, watching the scene unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Everything looked different now. I didn't see family. I saw vultures picking at a carcass. I watched Kyle across the table. He was wearing a new watch, a heavy gold chronograph that looked suspiciously expensive for an inventory associate. He caught my eye and smirked, raising his glass of vintage Pinot Noir. He thought he had one. He thought I was too weak to make a scene. I watched Brenda. She was radiant, soaking up the adoration of her sisters, playing the role of the benevolent matriarch who had raised a rich daughter. "My daughter is paying," she announced again, her voice shrill with delight. She shot me a warning glare, daring me to contradict the lie she had forced me into. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked at the menu. I ordered the onion soup. $12. I ate it slowly, savoring every spoonful as the bill for the table racked up. Wagyu lobster, truffles, bottle after bottle of wine. When the waiter brought the bill to Brenda, expecting my card, the total was over $5,000. I stood up. I slapped a 20 on the table, just enough to cover my soup and a modest tip. I walked straight out the back service door. The cool night air hit my face. I got into my car. The bridge was burned. The war had officially begun. The morning after the dinner, the silence in my apartment was heavy, but my phone was vibrating so hard against the coffee table it threatened to crack the glass. I picked it up just once. 112 text messages. "Mom is in a holding cell," my cousin messaged. The restaurant manager held them until the police arrived. "They are pressing charges for theft of services. You need to come down here now and pay this." Another from Aunt Viv. "You ungrateful brat. Your mother fainted. I hope you're happy." I felt a phantom pang of guilt, but I crushed it instantly. They hadn't cared when I was fired. They hadn't cared when I was sobbing in my car. They only cared now because the bill had come due. I didn't reply. I deleted the social media apps from my phone to stop the inevitable public shaming Brenda would attempt. I wasn't going to fight them in the court of public opinion. I was going to fight them with facts. I sat at my kitchen table and pulled a rugged, encrypted hard drive from my go bag. It contained the source code for the auto-route logistics algorithm I had built from scratch over the last 3 years. It was my baby. It was the brain that ran Summit Global's entire shipping network. Evander thought he had fired an employee, but he didn't realize he had severed the connection to the system's architect. I booted up my laptop. The screen glowed blue. It was time to see if they had read the fine print. I met Tanya, my law school friend, at a Greasy Spoon diner 3 towns over. I wore sunglasses and a hat, paranoid that Evander might have someone watching me. Tanya, sharp as a tack and twice as ruthless, flipped through the copy of my original employment contract I had saved. "You were hired as a junior analyst 5 years ago," Tanya said, tapping a paragraph on the 3rd page with a red acrylic nail. "And this is the key. Junior contracts at Summit don't have the invention assignment clause that management contracts do. They never updated this when you were promoted, did they?" I shook my head, sipping my black coffee. No, Evander was so arrogant. He just bumped my pay and title in the system. I never signed a new deal. Tanya grinned, a shark-like baring of teeth. "Then legally, any software you developed on your own time, even if used by the company, belongs to you. If we revoke the license, their system goes dark. This is leverage, Haley. Massive leverage." Her smile faded slightly. "But it doesn't clear your name for the missing container. If we play this card now, they'll just countersue and bury you in legal fees. We need proof that Evander and Kyle are the dirty ones before we pull the plug." "I can get proof," I said, my voice steady. I left myself a back door. Back in my apartment, I accessed the Summit Global Network. I didn't hack it, that would be illegal. I used a maintenance admin account I had created 2 years ago for system updates. Evander, in his incompetence, had wiped my employee profile but never audited the system for legacy admin accounts. I was in. I watched the live dashboard of the logistics department. It was a sea of red warning lights. It wasn't just because I was gone. It was because someone was interfering. I pulled up the user logs. I saw Kyle's login active. He was manually overriding the algorithm's decisions, forcing containers onto bizarre, inefficient paths to cover his tracks. He was drowning and taking the shipping network down with him. Then I dug deeper. I accessed the internal chat logs stored on the local server. I searched for keywords, price, data, sell. Bingo! A private chat between Evander and Kyle from 3 days ago popped up. Evander, the buyers in Rotterdam are asking for the client list. Do you have it? Kyle, downloaded it to the drive. Just need to get Haley out of the way so we can transfer the files without her flagging the traffic. Evander, frame her for the missing unit. I'll handle HR. Once she's gone, we sell the list and split the payout. My hands shook as I took screenshots. They hadn't just framed me to get Kyle a job. They were stripping the company for parts. I didn't go to the police yet. The police wouldn't understand the nuances of corporate data theft. I went to the one person who cared about the bottom line more than anything. I walked into the glass-walled lobby of Summit Global Headquarters. The receptionist, a new girl who didn't know I was persona non grata, smiled at me. I have a delivery for Mr. Tyler, I said, holding up a thick manila envelope. It's personal and urgent. Mr. Tyler, the CEO, was a ghost. He rarely came to the office, but today was the quarterly board review. I knew he would be there. I waited by the elevators for 40 minutes until his security detail arrived. As he walked toward the lift, I stepped into his path. Mr. Tyler, I said, my voice projecting clearly. My name is Haley Bennett. Your VP of Sales is currently selling your client data to a competitor, and your shipping network is about to crash because I'm the only one who knows how to fix it. Security moved to grab me, but Tyler held up a hand. He looked at me, his eyes cold and assessing. You're the one Evander fired for theft. I'm the one Evander framed to cover his own theft, I corrected, handing him the folder containing the chat logs. Give me 10 minutes. If I'm wrong, you can have me arrested. 10 minutes later, I sat in Tyler's soundproof office. He had read the logs. His face was unreadable, a mask of corporate stoicism. These logs could be faked, Tyler said, tossing the folder onto his desk. Evander has been with me for 10 years. You're a disgruntled ex-employee. Then test him, I challenged. Evander and Kyle are planning to transfer the data file today at noon. That's what the logs say. But they need the network up to do it. Tyler raised an eyebrow. What do you propose? Have IT simulate a catastrophic system purge, I explained. Flash a warning on every screen. Security breach detected. Automatic data. Wipe in 5 minutes. If they are innocent, they'll call IT support to save the company's work. If they are guilty, they'll panic and try to dump the stolen files onto an external drive before they're deleted. Tyler stared at me for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. This is Tyler. Initiate Protocol 0. Fake a data. Purge warning. Now. He turned his monitor so we could both watch the security feed of the logistics floor. The lights in the office flickered. Screens turned bright red with warning text. We watched Evander burst out of his office, his face pale. He ran straight to Kyle's desk. They didn't call IT. Kyle frantically pulled a hard drive from his bag and jammed it into the tower, trying to copy their stolen goods before the wipe. Got you, Tyler whispered, his finger hovering over the intercom button to summon security. But before he could press it, his desk phone screamed. It was Evander. Mr. Tyler, we are under a massive cyber attack. Evander's voice was frantic. It's Haley Bennett. She's hacking us right now. I have the trace. She's wiping the servers to destroy evidence of her theft. Tyler hesitated, looking at me. I authorized the simulation, Evander. No, sir. That's how she got in. Evander lied smoothly, his voice rising in panic. She tricked you into lowering the firewalls. It's not a simulation anymore. She hijacked the protocol to delete the actual client database. Tyler went pale. The doubt took root instantly. In that split second of confusion, the door to Tyler's office burst open. 3 guards from building security rushed in, batons drawn. That's her, the security chief shouted, pointing at me. Evander reported a malicious intrusion originating from her credentials. Wait, I shouted, standing up. Mr. Tyler, tell them. It was a test. Tyler looked at the guards. then at the chaotic red screens. He didn't know enough about the tech to know who was lying. If he stopped security, and Evander was right, the company would be destroyed and he would be to blame. The risk was too high. He retreated behind his mask of corporate self-preservation. "Ms. Bennett, stand up and put your hands behind your back," the chief commanded. I looked at Tyler, betrayed for the second time. He didn't stop them. As the cuffs locked around my wrists, Evander walked in, looking breathless and triumphant. "I knew she was unstable," Evander sighed, shaking his head. "Good work. Hold her until the police arrive." I was marched out past the glass walls, past the gawking employees, and handed over to a police cruiser waiting at the curb. It looked like the bad guys had won. The interrogation room was cold. I had been sitting there for 3 hours, handcuffed to the table, when the door finally opened. It wasn't the detective. It was Tanya, looking furious, followed by a sheepish-looking Mr. Tyler and a grim-faced police captain. "Unchain my client," Tanya demanded, slamming a plastic evidence bag onto the table. "Now." Inside the bag was Kyle's work phone. "Mr. Tyler had security seize all department devices immediately after your arrest," Tanya explained, her eyes flashing fire. "Since it was a company-issued device, IT was able to reset the passcode and perform a forensic sweep." The captain tapped the screen of the seized phone to play an audio file. The room filled with a voice I knew better than my own. "Kyle, honey, listen to me." Brenda's voice crackled, clear and damning. "Don't worry about Haley finding out you framed her. Just sell the data to the Dutch contact, pay off my restaurant debt, and we'll say she hacked the system out of revenge. No one will believe her over Evander." The silence that followed was heavy. The hacking charge evaporated instantly. It wasn't corporate espionage on my part. It was a conspiracy to commit grand larceny and fraud by them. The captain unlocked my cuffs. "Ms. Bennett, you're free to go, and we're going to need your help to coordinate the arrest." I rubbed my wrists, looking at Tyler. "I'm not doing this for you," I said coldly. "I'm doing this to finish it." 48 hours later, Evander called an all-hands meeting in the main boardroom. He stood at the podium, looking polished and arrogant, projecting a slide titled "New Security Protocols." "Regrettably, we had to terminate a former employee for malicious attacks," Evander announced, his voice smooth as silk. "But thanks to Kyle's quick thinking, the data was saved." The double doors at the back of the room swung open with a furious, heavy thud. Tyler walked in first. The room went silent. Then 2 officers entered. And finally me. Evander's smile faltered. "Sir? I was just briefing the team." "You're not briefing anyone, Evander," Tyler said, his voice carrying to the back of the room. "You're under arrest for corporate espionage and fraud." Evander laughed nervously. "Is this a joke? She's the hacker." "We have the chat logs, Evander," I said, stepping forward. "And we have the buyer in Rotterdam who just confirmed your offer to sell the client list." The officers moved in. Evander panicked, shoving a chair at them and pointing a shaking finger at Kyle. It was him. The kid. He stole the credentials. Kyle, sitting in the front row, shrieked. "You told me to do it. You said she was in the way." The entire company watched as the VP of sales and his protege were handcuffed and dragged out, screaming accusations at each other. It was the most professional satisfaction I had ever felt. With the criminal charges pending, Brenda's world collapsed. The restaurant sued her. Her credit was destroyed. Desperate to control the narrative, she summoned the extended family to Aunt Viv's house for an emergency intervention. I wasn't invited, but I came anyway. I walked into the living room just as Brenda was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Haley has always been mentally unstable," she was saying to the 15 relatives who had eaten on my dime. "We need to forgive her for the trouble she's caused. She's sick." "I'm not sick, Mom," I said from the doorway. The room gasped. Brenda froze. "Haley, you shouldn't be here." "I have something you need to hear," I said, holding up my phone. I connected it to the living room's Bluetooth speaker with a tap. I hit play. The recording from Kyle's phone blasted through the room. Brenda's voice, plotting, cruel and greedy, filled the air. "Just sell the data, pay off my restaurant debt, say she did it." The color drained from Aunt Viv's face. The uncle who had called me ungrateful dropped his drink. They looked from the speaker to Brenda, horror dawning on them. You framed your own daughter? Aunt Viv whispered. For a dinner bill. Brenda stammered. It's fake. AI. She faked it. It's police evidence, I said, disconnecting my phone. The police are looking for you, Mom. I just thought the family should know the truth before they get here. I walked out, leaving her drowning in the silence of a room that finally saw her for what she was. The next morning, I met Tyler at a quiet coffee shop. He looked tired. The board wants you back, Tyler said, sliding a contract across the table. VP of Logistics. Double your old salary. A signing bonus that covers the restaurant bill, and then some. I looked at the paper. It was everything I had worked for. It was validation. I slid it back. I don't want to be an employee, Mr. Tyler, I said. I don't trust the company anymore. But you need my software. I pulled out a different document, a licensing agreement. I'm starting my own consultancy firm. You can license AutoRoute from me for a monthly fee, triple my old salary, and I work remotely on my own terms. Tyler read it. He smiled, a genuine expression this time. He signed it and handed over a corporate check for the initial retainer. Pleasure doing business with you, Ms. Bennett. I walked out of the shop and got into my beat-up sedan for the last time. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Brenda. Haley, please. I can't make rent. They're garnishing my wages. I blocked the number. I drove to a small diner on the edge of town. I sat at the counter and ordered a bowl of onion soup. When it arrived, I looked at it for a long moment. It didn't taste like defeat anymore. It tasted like freedom. I pulled up a car dealership website on my phone, scrolling through SUVs I could now pay for in cash and ate in peace.